question is to the Minister for Child Protection. When did the Minister first consider not proceeding with the social workers registration scheme?
Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. Look, it goes without saying that social workers in South Australia bring very specialised knowledge, empathy and critical skills to support the individuals and the families and communities that they work with every day. And let me assure the House that the decision not to proceed with the scheme was not made lightly in any way, shape or form. The reality is, though, that cost of living pressures continue to impact South Australians every day. I think we all know that. And we as a government don't want to create additional red tape and additional financial burden on hard-working social workers here in South Australia. Also, one thing that concerns me and the rest of the government is we don't want to put South Australia at a competitive disadvantage against other states and territories by bringing in a new scheme in circumstances where other states and territories don't have that scheme operating. The scheme has been the subject of extensive consultation, as the member will know, over a period of about 5 years. When I came into this portfolio just a few months ago, this was one of the first things that came across my desk. I genuinely looked at it, discussed it, and found out that there is a divergence of views as to whether or not social workers actually want this scheme. And let me be clear, this is not the government on one side and versus the social workers who are, all on the same page. It's definitely not a decision like that. This is a case where there is two different camps in the social worker. There are those social workers that want this, and I understand the reasons why. There is a very quieter but equally as large group of social workers who've reached out to me in recent months to say that they want to put a pause on this scheme. We've weighed up those matters. We've taken into account cost of living. We've taken into account the economic, potential competitive disadvantage that we would put this state at, and we made that decision in recent weeks. So can I reassure the House that this is not a decision we've just kind of made on a whim? It's something that we've looked at very closely and we take the implications of it very seriously. Can I just say as well that there are a couple of very big organisations that support our decision, one being the Australian Services Union that act for and represent social workers that work in the not-for-profit sector. Also, organisation Embolden, that is the peak body for social workers and organisations in the domestic violence space. So I hope I make it clear to the House that there is a very clear divergence of views on this issue. We're a government that doesn't like to kick the can down the road. We need to make the hard decisions when we need to make them. We've made that decision. I would like to thank and put on record the excellent work of the Social Worker Registration Board and the team within the Department for Child Protection that led that work, particularly Professor Sarah Wendt. This decision is no reflection on the quality of that work whatsoever. It's a hard decision that we've had to make, but we know it's the right one at this point in time. Can I just also put on record that the government is not opposed to the concept of registration and doing what we can to lift social workers and their standing in this state. If I get the opportunity to have discussions about the possibility of federal scheme with my colleagues at the federal level, I'm more than happy to continue those discussions. But at this point in time, we've made the hard decision.
Member for Hyson.
There's a supplementary in light of what the Minister said at the end of her answer. In the circumstances, will the Minister now fast-track advocacy for a national scheme?
Thank you.
Minister for Child Protection.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to advocate on behalf of our state to see whether there's a possibility or interest on the part of the Commonwealth and other states and territories. Because the key thing here is that if we need to do anything in this space, it needs to be something that is nationwide. For too long, I think we've had state-based schemes that create more difficulties than needed. I'm a lawyer. I've been subject to registration schemes for a number of periods of time, for a long period of time. And when I've moved state, I've had to pay enormous fees just to have my registration moved. It's not ideal. we don't want the same sort of thing in this context. But yes, more than happy to explore what the options might be.
Member for Hyson.
Thank you, Speaker. My question again is to the Minister for Child Protection. Can the Minister advise the House who, if anybody, was consulted on the cancellation of the social workers registration scheme prior to last Friday's announcement?
Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you again for the follow-up question. Consultation has been occurring in this space for over 5 years, and particularly over the last 12 months. In fact, a decision was made not to turn the scheme on some 12 months, as I understand it, because of the need for additional consultation. You can ask anyone in the unions, anyone in the departments in this space, that there have been discussions about this for a long, long time. Eventually there comes a point, Speaker, where we as a government need to make a decision that we think is in the best interests of all social workers in this state, and in fact, more broadly for our community and families that we serve. And we made that hard decision. In terms of the timing, can I say that I made efforts to personally contact all of the board members before the decision was made, and a number of other key stakeholders to make sure that people weren't taken by surprise. But in terms of consultation, that has been happening over many years.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Child Protection. What advice, if any, did the Social Workers Registration Board provide to the Minister on the decision not to proceed with the Social Workers Registration Scheme prior to last Friday's announcement? When was it informed of the decision to cancel the scheme, and did it support the decision?
Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you to the member for his question. I couldn't quite hear it, but I think you said in terms of what advice was provided. Do you mind just repeating the question?
Repeated,
yeah,
Minister, yeah.
Sorry, a bit
just,
hard to hear.
A little louder straight to the microphone there, Member for Hyson.
Yeah, we've three parts to the question. What advice did the board provide to the Minister, if any? Secondly, when was the board advised of the decision to cancel the scheme? And did the board support that decision?
Thank you, Member. Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you to the member for his question. As I said in an earlier answer, this is one of the first matters that came across my desk. It's something that the government took very seriously, that I looked into, discussed with my colleagues, weighed up the pros and cons, and then as a government, we made the hard decision. Since that decision has been made, in very recent weeks, I might add, once a decision like that is made, there is a process by which we work out who we need to tell. It's the usual, process. Preparing letters, announcing a media strategy, working out how we're going to address this. I have been in regular touch with the Office of the Social Worker Registration Board since that decision was made. I'm not in a position to tell you right now each time and date I had that, and nor would I think that's appropriate to do that. But the decision has only been made by the government in recent weeks, and since that time I've been actively discussing that with the Office of the Social Worker Registration Board and making sure that we are communicating with those people that need to know that.
Supplementary.
Supplementary, did you say?
Yes, in light of that, the Minister referred to the decision having been made in recent weeks. The announcement was last Friday. There was a reference in the outset of estimates earlier Friday afternoon. When was the decision actually made by government?
Minister for Child Protection.
As I say, thanks to the member for his question. The decision was made in recent weeks, within the last fortnight. In terms of the actual making of the announcement, there was a process, I said, that needs to be gone through where we make sure that we tell key stakeholders. We made a decision to formally put on record the government's decision during the estimates. I was scheduled for Friday afternoon. I did raise it then very openly. I do note that the member didn't ask me one question in relation to it. But we've been at all times open, transparent. Prior to making that announcement in estimates, I was able to, as I mentioned earlier, make a number of calls to the board members in particular and other key stakeholders.
Member for Hyson.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Child Protection. Did the Minister speak to Chloe Valentine prior to the announcement that the Social Workers Registration Scheme not proceed?
Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you. Look, I know this was something that was raised with me when I was on radio openly discussing the matter earlier this week. I have since had a chance to speak to Ms Valentine. I wasn't able to speak with her before the announcement was made, and I apologise to her for that. I had a really great conversation on Monday morning actually, with Ms Valentine. We're catching up in a couple of weeks' time. It was a very positive discussion, and I very much look forward to meeting Ms Valentine in person, learning from her, seeing what we can do better in the child protection space here in South Australia.
Member for Stewart.
Thanks very much, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Child Protection. Can the Minister advise the House how much of the $4.7 million committed to establish the social workers registration scheme has been spent, along with the $750,000 or so for the creation of the portal? And with your leave, ma'am, and that of the House, I'll explain.
Leave is sought. Is leave granted?
The Minister, back on 16 November 2023, told the House, and I quote, I'm very proud to support the establishment of the scheme. The government has now committed $4.7 million over 4 years, and the 25-26 budget set aside, I think, $724,000 for the establishment of the portal.
Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you to the member for his question. The member is correct that the government committed $4.7 million for this program. I don't have the precise number, but my understanding is that a significant portion of that has been expended. But can I say this? The focus of this government is not on that. I mean, that is, of course, we always want to make sure we spend taxpayer funds wisely, and that is our key focus across all of government. But the focus here is not on that so much as not bringing in new charges on workers here in South Australia and additional red tape. Can I say also, let's think about what this scheme was focused on and is a big part of, and that is raising professional standards in the social work sector. And can I reassure the House that that is indeed a big focus of the department that I oversee at the moment, the Department for Child Protection. In the last 3 years, I can tell you that there's been a lot of work done in the department in terms of professional development for its social workers. There is a new learning academy, there is a new chief practitioner within the department, and a new and renewed focus on making sure that our social workers are performing their jobs to the best of their ability with the maximum amount of training possible. Because we have an unending focus on making sure that the children and families of this state are protected and are given the security that they need. So in terms of the amount, as I just said, we're less concerned with that and more concerned about reducing red tape and not bringing in additional costs for the workers here in South Australia.
Member for Hyson.
Speaker, my question again is to the Minister for Child Protection. What, if any, part of Professor Went's work towards the establishment of the social workers registration scheme is anything other than wasted? And with your leave, ma'am, and that of the House, I'll explain.
Leave is sought. Is leave granted? Leave's granted.
Professor Went was engaged to assist with the establishment of the social workers registration scheme over a period of years.
Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you to the member for his question. Indeed, the work that Professor Went has done has been outstanding, and let me put that on record. And it's a complete opposite of what the member is suggesting. Nothing of this is wasted. The work that Professor Went and her team have done has been incredible over the years. Whenever you mention Professor Went's name in this sector, and indeed I have been having a lot of discussions about this matter over the last few months, people only have the highest of praise for her and her work. In terms of the work that she's done over the last few years, there is a package of very useful work there that has provided a strong foundation now for strengthening professional development across the sector. None of the work that she has done is wasted. And indeed, we discussed the prospect of a federal scheme earlier. If that is something that I'm able to canvass with my colleagues around the nation, then that work will be very useful. Regardless of that, this work creates frameworks and settings within which we can use across government to make sure that we are implementing professional standards in all of our government departments. And I very much will be doing that within the department that I oversee.
Member for Hyson.
And in light of those answers, my question again is to the Minister for Child Protection. Will the Minister now apologise to South Australians for the waste of time and money, and in particular the wasted work of Professor Wendt over these many years?
Point of order, the Treasurer.
The purported facts in that question
I agree.
should be restated.
Please rephrase the question, Member for Hyson.
I thank you, Speaker. Will the Minister now apologise to South Australians for the cancellation of the registration scheme and all the waste entailed?
Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you to the member for his question. There is nothing to apologise for. This is a decision that we, as a government, have made, taking into account all of the differing views on this matter. I wish it was straightforward. I really do. But the reality is, as I said before, this is not a case of the government, big bad government on one side versus social workers on the other. There are different camps within social workers that have different views on this matter. Our government is always focused on weighing up those views and making the hard calls, but the right calls for all South Australians, and we've done that in this case.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Child Protection. What, if any, consultation with Health Services Union has the Minister had on the decision not to proceed with the Social Workers Registration Scheme? And together or not with the Health Services Union, what, if any, alternative options were considered prior to not proceeding with the scheme?
Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you to the member for his question. I have had lengthy discussions with the Health Services Union over the last few days and continue to discuss these matters with them. I will repeat my previous answer, which is that consultation has been undertaken in relation to this program over a number of years, and it's for that reason that it was most recently wasn't turned on but delayed again to allow for more consultation. Eventually there comes a point, and I think South Australians want a government that is prepared to make decisions and not keep kicking the can down the road, and I'm proud to be part of that government.
Member for Hyson.
Thanks very much, Speaker. My question again is to the Minister for Child Protection. Is the government still committed to implementing the coroner's recommendation at 22-21 of the report all the way back into the inquest into the death of poor Chloe Valentine?
Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you. The member raises an excellent point, and it's something that I've turned my mind to. There's been some suggestions in recent days that we are going against a recommendation of previous reports. Now, I've had a look into all of those reports. There's been a number of inquiries and royal commissions and things, as the member would know, over the last 10 years, if not longer. At no point in time was there a recommendation that there be a state-based scheme. To the contrary, in the Nyland report, the Commissioner recommended against a state-based scheme. So the focus of our government has been on consulting with people over the last 5 years about what might be possible in South Australia. We've made the hard decision. I'm not opposed to thinking about this further and talking with my federal colleagues, but we've made the decision, and I think most South Australians just want to get on and govern.
For Hyson.
Speaker, question again to the Minister for Child Protection. Did the government consider any cost savings measures, for example, waiving registration fees or subsidising them for a period of time prior to deciding not to proceed with the scheme?
Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you to the member. As I said, these matters have been consulted on over many, many years. All of the different matters that the member raises were taken into account during the course of that consultation. We weigh up those factors as a good government, we make the hard decision, and we stand by it.
Member for Mount Gambier.
Thank you, Speaker. My question again is to the Minister for Child Protection. How many meetings the Social Workers Registration Board had since its inception? What's now to become of the board, and will any of the work that it's done be retained?
Minister for Child Protection.
Thank you to the member for his question. I don't have the exact number of meetings they've had since they were established, but I can certainly take that on notice.
Member for Hyson.
Supplementary or repeat, and as to the balance of the question, what's now to become of the board, and will any of the work that it's done be retained?
Minister for
you.
Child Protection.
Thank you. Yes, the board will be disbanded over the coming weeks. And as I mentioned in my previous answer, none of the work done by the board was of waste at all. In fact, it was an excellent high quality that will underpin professional standards in the industry as we move forward.
Member for Mount Gambier.